welcome to the Budget Committee. Today it is 9 o'clock on the dot. Today we will be dealing with the briefing on the Municipal Economic Review and Outlook. And that will be a briefing by the Provincial Treasury as tabled by the Minister of Finance in the province yesterday. This will be followed by the consideration and adoption of the negotiating mandate report on the revision of Revenue Amendment Bill Section 76 in COP, followed by resolutions and actions. And as promised, respective input as received at the respective deadline this morning has been distributed to respective members of the committee. I'm going to start by just asking members just to please introduce themselves, and then for Provincial Treasury just to introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump straight into the briefing on the Mero. My name is Deirdre Bartman, Chair of the committee.
Good morning, Chair. Kayla Murray, member of the committee.
Good morning, Chair. Derek America, member of the committee.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Member Klaas.
Good morning, Chairperson and the other members of the committee and members of staff. I'm Lulama Mvimbi.
Morning.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, all members, colleagues. Khalil Brankais, thank you.
Morning. I just want to check quickly. I don't see any other members online on the panel, so I will now hand over to the Minister and a Provincial Treasury team for introduction. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, and to all the honourable members of the Budget Committee. We're very happy to present to the committee a little bit more in-depth briefing on the Mero, which was tabled yesterday in the legislature. Just to note, Chair, that the acting head official, Ms. Gantana, is at a TCF at the moment. So our delegation will be led by Ms. Pick and Ms. Robinson, who will be able to take us through the presentation. So good morning. My name is Mireille Wenger, and I'm the Provincial Minister responsible for Finance and Economic Opportunities.
Good morning. Good morning, Budget Committee. Annelies Pick, Provincial Treasury.
Good morning, members of the Budget Committee. Shirley Robinson, Chief Director of Public Policy Services and lead with Nadia Rehnquist on the Mero. Thank you.
Good morning, Budget Committee. Nadia Rehnquist, Director, Local Government Budget Office.
Good morning, Budget Committee members. I'm Shannon Engel, Provincial Treasury under Nadia.
Is that everyone?
Good morning, Stephen Kenyon, also from the Provincial Treasury, just providing support to the Mero team today.
Morning.
Good morning, Budget Committee's Kenneth Mtsweni, Fiscal Policy.
Good morning, members. Malcolm Boyson, Fiscal Policy.
Okay, I just want to check quickly if that is everyone. I think so. Okay, colleagues, with that, we're going to jump straight into the Mero. Minister and Ms. Pick, would you like to make introductory remarks, or are we going to jump straight into questions on the respective books?
Chair, with your permission, I think we'll go straight in, given that we only have 55 minutes with you.
No problem. Colleagues, I'm going to start with the names of the books in front of me. I hope you have the books in front of you as well, and then I will start with tabling those particular books. I'm first going to start with the Cape Metro book. So if I have any questions and hands on the Cape Metro book that was tabled. Just a reminder that once I'm done, I'm going to move to the next book, and then we're not coming back. Okay, I don't see any hands on the Cape Metro book. I'm now moving. Okay, I see one hand, Member Murray.
Thank you,
Yumi,
Chair.
go ahead.
Chair, just a question on methodology. And this doesn't just apply to the one book, but to all the books. How did they go about the process of collating the information? And then also particularly noting that we're still waiting on the census data. How did they manage to get around not having that information to inform their findings? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Nkondlo.
Morning, Chair, and good morning to I think if I can follow on the issue of just methodology, one, I would just want to understand, noting that I think from the in this administration we had actually changed the approach to the mayor. I'm interested in just to ask. Are there any specific elements that would have been changed from the old presentation of the mayor of everything in one book? And as we now have got separate books per municipality, are there any sections that either in terms of that's one. Secondly, in terms of cost, is this exercise less costly instead of one book where everything is in one book, and now we've got almost 6 books per municipality? Just wanted to that just my initial issues around the approach that the department has taken. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I actually think it's the second year that it's different books, because I usually take the Central Karoo ones to my constituency, but I'll leave that up to Minister and Department to deal with. Minister, I see your hand up.
Thanks very much, Chair. So we're very happy to take the questions per region. We also have prepared a presentation which gives a kind of analysis of each of the regions comparatively, if that would be helpful for the committee.
I think it would. Can we please start with the Cape Metro one?
So the presentation kind of lumps them all together. Will show you a Metro v Winelands v Overberg, etc. It kind of will tell you by theme what's happening in each of the districts. So if that would be helpful for the budget committee, we're very happy to flight that and talk through it. And then have questions after, or if you'd like to do book by book questions, up to you. But we did have some.
Let us finish the presentation then first, and then what I'll do is I will table the books in the order that they're also in your presentation then, so that they make sense.
Okay, perfect. We'll then flight the presentation, but maybe if I could just ask the colleagues in the presentation just to address those 2 questions on the methodology as the introduction, then also the reason why we have a book per region. We are aiming for cost cutting, which is why you'll see there's a QR code in each book, so that they're fully digital, fully online. So we won't be printing many copies of them, but the idea is flowing from the Pero, we now have the municipal kind of drill down into each region. So we have a specific focus on the same metrics, so you can compare apples with apples within each of the district municipalities across the province. And the idea is for the municipalities to be able to use this in their budget planning cycles. So for example, if someone is from the Cape Winelands district, they would be able to have a look what's happening within their district, but also within the municipal area in which they find themselves. So the idea is for this to really be used as a tool to inform budget and planning processes by district level. So we're really looking at the spatial dimension here and, localized data, as it were. So with that, as maybe some key or some introductory remarks, I'll hand over to the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Nadia Rehnquist will lead the presentation. Go ahead, Nadia.
Thank you so much, Chair and Minister and Shirley. Can I just check, is the presentation visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It is.
awesome. Let's go. I don't know why am I not seeing it?
The Teams is slow from our office, Nadia. I had the same issue in my first meeting. We can see the first slide.
Okay.
We can see the second slide. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So, good morning, everybody. With regards to the middle this year, I'll be very brief. It's a lot of information I know to take in, especially with regards to the 6 books. What we can say is, Member Nkondo, just going from the 1 book to the 6 books, is that it cost the same amount of money over the 3 years, as we have a contract in place for 3 years. So there's been no cost increases on developing it into 6 books. However, with the printing, we have decreased our printing budget significantly. So we are printing less books, moving to more digital publications, and therefore enabling a cost saving on that as well. But if you look at the Meadow this year, you will notice that there are 6 district booklets, and there are some key messages overall that we're seeing coming out of the Meadow. One of it is related to the population increases, which will have an effect on housing and demand for basic services. And then we also speak into most of the municipal economies. This is the first year that we're seeing them recover from the impact of COVID-19. Unemployment has decreased overall. Very interesting that the informal sector is the one responsible for most of the job growth in the latest Meadow data. We see load shedding coming through as a key constraint still to our performance in several sectors. And then the slow recovery of tourism in 2022, we are recovering, but we expect a full recovery in 2023. And then there is the issue of the crime rates that has increased overall in all municipal areas. I'm trying to move to the next slide. So what's changed in the Meadow this year? So every year in the Meadow, we try and innovate. We try and add new data to the Meadow. So we've included what's called the spatial tax data. And this is data that we've gotten from SARS. And this data has, in partnership with our colleagues in the Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, this data has been disaggregated down to town level. So now we are able to see who the biggest employers are in which towns within the Western Cape. This is groundbreaking for us, because before you'll either get data at a district or a provincial level, but never down to town level. We can see what people are earning within those towns. We've used maps to display this data more visually in the Meadow. And then we also have a number of new indicators. We have the grant recipients information, who's receiving SASSA grants, who's receiving child grants, teenage pregnancy, malnutrition, food poverty. We have literacy levels by race this year. We can see the grade 3, 6, and 9 language and maths pass rate, the grade 12 bachelor's rates, as well as the housing demand. And then with regards to the census information, the question that was asked by Member Murray, we have received the census information quite late, and we have managed to update the Meadow population and demographic data with the census information. However, that information we haven't filtered down to local level data yet with regards to the housing information and the services information, because there are still concerns about the credibility of the data. And so we did not want to put it through at that level yet, but we have included the latest census data within this year's Meadow. Moving on to the macroeconomic performance, we know that the global economy, the national economy, and our regional economy is very much tied together. We see the same global shocks or in the system that we see in our national economy with regards to the effect of the international conflict on our local economy. We also have our own rising interest rates, and then our load shedding, which is a unique issue within South Africa that's affecting the economy. And this information was all tabled in the Meadow, and in the Meadow we have a QR code that will lead you to the Meadow, will lead you to the latest Meadow. And there's also another QR code just in the previous slide over here that's related to the special economic tax data that you can find in the middle, but you can also go to the dashboard yourself and disaggregate the data further if necessary. Moving on to the regional GDPR and employment contribution, just to show that we all know that the metro, which is the blue circle, is the biggest contributor to the economy of the Western Cape. But what's great to see coming through in the data this year, that if you look at the circle graph, the outside circles of the graph are increasing, showing that there are regional economies that are contributing a bigger percentage to the GDPR of the Western Cape. This goes the same for employment. So economies such as the Winelands, such as the West Coast, the Garden Route, they are taking over a bigger share of the Western Cape's economy, and this is mainly due to the growth in the agricultural sector. Moving on very quickly, we'll notice that in terms of GDPR growth, the top three highest growth municipalities that we're seeing in 2022 that's been estimated is related to the Langeberg municipality, to Kannaland, and to the George municipality. Some of these munis, such as Kannaland, is a relatively small municipality, so it will grow from a relatively smaller base, but still showing the highest growth within the province in 2022. Moving on to the graph on the right, this graph speaks about the forecast going forward, showing that all economies are growing. There's actually no contractions expected in 23 and 24. The blue dots is 2023 and the grey dots are 2024. And you'll notice that the biggest growth is expected in Beaufort West as well as the Kannaland municipalities. The highest growth is expected in the Witzenberg municipality. So going forward, now we don't expect to see any of the municipalities below the line. Everybody will experience the growth spurt in 2024. This graph speaks to the main contributors to economic growth. And what we see here at the bottom, we see the bigger sector, the bigger the blue, the bigger the dot, the bigger the growth. The biggest sectors being that has grown in 2022 estimated is the transport, storage and communication sector. Very interesting for us because that sector grew due to semi-migration trends, a lot of people moving, so relocation services, courier services, delivery services, services where people are moving to online purchasing. Those are the sectors the transportation sector has grown in. We see our retail, trade and accommodation sector growing. That's due to the recovery of the tourism sector. And then our finance sector, our tertiary sector, real estate and business has always been quite strong. Looking at the top, we still see a contraction in the construction sector, which is concerning, but this could be due to higher interest rates, inflation, pressure from load shedding. So that affects those type of sectors. And we see a contraction in the agricultural sector, but more explained as a normalizing or balancing out of the agricultural sector. Over the last few years since COVID, the agricultural sector has grown pretty rapidly, which is not sustainable. So it will normalize at some point, but still sustaining at quite high levels of growth. With regards to employment, all the job losses of 2020 and 2021 has still not been recovered in 2022. Here we have the 193,000 jobs that the Western Cape lost during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is net jobs. This is explained as the number of jobs that has been recovered minus the jobs that has been lost. So in 2021, we saw a net job loss of 69,000, but in 2022, we see a job recovery of 125,000 jobs. So we're still sitting at a net job loss of around 137,000 jobs, but we see that this will increase going forward, and we know that the latest job data does reflect that the job market is recovering. Unemployment rate overall has decreased in the Western Cape, still pretty high in the Metro as well as the Central Karoo district, but overall in the Western Cape, the unemployment rate is going down. Moving on to the formal employment data, and this is the data that we get from SARS. So overall, you'll see the blue dots explain to you where the biggest jobs or job markets are within the province. We can see some great jobs happening here in the Garden Route district. Interesting to note that short-term accommodation. So the tourism sector is one of the biggest employers within the Garden Route district. Within the metro, we know that the tertiary sector is the most prominent, so we would expect to see sales, wholesale trade within the metro, and then the agricultural sector being the biggest employers within the West Coast, within the winelands, within the Overberg. The growth of our biggest exporters, the perennial crops such as apples, pears, grapes, canola, wheat. With regards to regional exports, our top valued export products and destinations, this percentage makes up the 100% exports within the Western Cape over this period, and the biggest product that's exported from the metro or from the winelands, as we see, is citrus to the value of 8.1 billion, and the biggest export partner being the Netherlands. And so this data you can go through and you can see the country that has the biggest export for that district. So flat rolled products and iron or steel to the value of 3.9 billion in the West Coast, and our biggest export partner being the USA. And sweetened milk and cream from the Central Karoo, and our biggest partner being our neighbor, Namibia. In terms of tourism performance, so we see a huge recovery in bed nights across the districts, and we have still not recovered back to 2019 levels, but as you can see, we are definitely increasing our bed nights, and tourism is on its way to recover, and we will expect a full recovery in 2023. When you look at the bottom graph, speaking to tourism spending as a proportion of GDPR, you will notice that the expense, the percentage is increasing across all of the districts, except for the Central Karoo district, where the percentage of GDPR from tourism is decreasing. This being due to the fact that most of the visitors to the Central Karoo are domestic visitors, and given the costs of fuel and traveling, you can expect if you go on a holiday now, you're not necessarily going to take your family to the CKD, because you will go away for a weekend somewhere much closer, and it will cost you less. And so the CKD is not seeing the increase in their tourism economy right now. Moving along swiftly, we also included data about public sector investment, and this is the Western government's procurement expenditure on designated groups in 22-23. And what's good to see is that the Western Cape spends most of its procurement on businesses that are at least 51% Black-owned. This goes for the metro. The percentages are in brackets. So in the metro, 71% of all procurement is spent on at least 51% Black-owned businesses. Let's look at the Garden Route, for instance. Of their 59.9%, 12.6% are spent on Black women-owned business. And then we also have the share of procurement spend that's spent on youth-owned businesses, people with disabilities, and military veterans. We've included a slide on economic opportunities. So looking at all this data, what do we see happening, and where should the districts be focusing their attention as a municipality and as a local and a regional economy? A lot of infrastructure that's needed to support agricultural projects across most of the districts. There's infrastructure investment needed to keep up with migration trends. So in areas like the Garden Route or the Overberg or the winelands, where we see the population increasing due to people moving there to live there permanently, the infrastructure levels need to match that. We see looking at public-private partnerships to support industries that are at risk, such as fruit processing. Stellenbosch, we know, also has the technological hub. Most of one of the huge employers in Stellenbosch is in the tech industry, and this has implications for attracting private investment. So very interesting in each book in the middle. Yeah, you can see what your options are in the districts for growth and economic growth, and catalysts such as renewable energy products developments, which are at the forefront of all of our minds and lips right now. Going through to the safety and well-being information, and this will be our last sections. As I mentioned, we included the census information, and the census information shows an increase in all of the districts, pretty much stabilizing information with regards to the population in the metro and the West Coast, and a slight decline in population in the winelands. This information is being contested at the moment, and we are aware of the discrepancy. and we are interested to see how this will be taken forward. Population growth in the Western Cape was led by the Metro, the Breedon Valley and Drakensberg municipalities within the Cape Winelands, by the George municipality, which has become the biggest municipality after the Metro right now in terms of population, Saldanha Bay, Swartland, Overstrand, Theewaterskloof, and the Beaufort West municipality. The new data we've also included is the proportion of population that's still living below the food poverty line. And this is taken from the amount of money that a household is or a person needs to be able to spend on food each month. And that amount is 663 Rand a month, according to Stats SA. And so we see in these bigger municipalities, Drakensberg, the Metro, Swartland, and Saldanha Bay, very high proportions of the demographic below the food poverty line, below the 663 Rand, and the lowest level of food poverty in the more rural municipalities, potentially due to, more food security, more farming economies where people are able to support themselves in that way. With regards to education, great to see that our grade 10 to 12 retention rate is improving across the province, with the highest retention rate improvement seen in the Central Karoo district, which is great for us because the year before we saw the retention rate drop to 62.1%, but it's had a sharp increase to 78.4%. Then with regards to matric pass rates, most districts show an improvement in matric pass rates, a slight decline in the West Coast and a slight decline in the Garden Route. We also include information on the bachelor's pass rate. So this speaks to the number of matriculants that pass with the bachelor's to be able to gain entrance to university. And we are averaging around 40% across the 4 districts of students that pass matric that have university entrances, 37.1% in the West Coast, and the lowest in the Central Karoo, with only 28.5% of all matriculants having bachelor's pass rates. In regards to the health data, we included teenage pregnancy and neonatal mortality rates. Teenage pregnancy increased in 10 municipalities in between 2020 and 2022, and these are all the municipalities that's highlighted in red. The most concerning is the Bergrivier municipality, Oudtshoorn, Hessequa, and Laingsburg. Then with regards to neonatal mortality rates, so those are babies that die at birth, we see the most the rate being the highest in the Cederberg and in the the Beaufort West municipality. With regards to the Gini coefficient, great to see that the Gini coefficient is on a decline. We know that Gini coefficient measures income inequality, and that there are still municipal areas that are above the NDP target of 0.60 by 2030. Those will be Stellenbosch, Overstrand, Mossel Bay, George, Bito, and Knysna. But overall, across all the districts, the Gini coefficient is on a decline, showing that the income is being distributed more equally. With regards to Human Development Index, and this is a composite index that measures life expectancy, health, education, and GDP per capita, so overall well-being of the citizen within those areas. And we've noticed in times of job losses, as 2020 and 21, the HDI level will decline because there is less income within the economy. But in times when the income improves and with consistent and continuous investment by the government in health and education, we will see an incline in HDI again. And this graph is quite nice because it shows you in terms of the curves that all the HDI is on an increase in most of the districts, but it will still lag behind 2019 levels due to the delayed recovery of jobs. With regards to the crime rate, we see crime increase in most municipal areas over 22-23. The red dots show the increase of crime in those areas, and this is mostly related to large increases recorded in drug-related crime across the province. Then, Chair, on the last slide, these are just the key implications of policy planning and budgeting. And when we speak to our municipalities and to local government and provincial government, we take these into account coming out of the data from the mirror. What do we see coming through with population growth, and how will that be applied for planning and budgeting going forward? Load shedding and electricity price increases, what effect does that have on households, on ability to pay for services, and on municipal revenue? Looking at self-financing infrastructure investments, what are the new alternatives to funding infrastructure projects within the municipal area to prepare for the future demand on infrastructure within each district? Skills development education, where are the needs and what will be the new industries, and which skill levels need to be improved to accommodate for the industrialization that we'll most likely see going forward? And then just also bearing in mind our international trade, tourism, and informal sector. Those are very important sectors that we need to keep in mind because they are huge contributors to the economy, but when we don't have the sectors such as the trade sector fully functional due to issues such as road infrastructure or the ports not working, then we will not see growth in those sectors that are contributing most to our economy. Honourable Chair, that is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Open for questions.
Thank you so much. What I will do is I'll allow members to either pose their questions per book or per topic. The topics will then be in terms of the presentation. So if members can then just please indicate which one they are particularly referring to. But given that members might be referring to any one of the books, I will then table all of them at the same time. Colleagues, I will then take hands now. Member Nkondlo, and then Member America. Let me just write this down. Okay. Then I see Member Classes hand. Okay, in that order. Thank you so much.
My hand is also up, Chairperson. My apologies for interjecting.
Apologies, I don't.
I'm trying to.
Okay, apologies. I see your hand up now, and MS team is telling me it's number 4, so I'm going to take it in that order. Nkondlo, America, Class, Vimbi. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the presentation. I must say it's always very encouraging and refreshing to listen to the Mero report. Personally, I think it's a report and that I take very serious because it's educational to me as a member to understand better my responsibility. So I want to once again appreciate the work, and I think that is put in by the department and the officials. And I think the presenter, I think, makes it very understanding and also much more simpler. I think from a presentation point of view, considering that as Parliament, obviously accepting the data because numbers do not lie, they tell things as they are. It's one thing to look at those numbers, but our interest with the executive authority or the minister that is in our midst is always what can be done with this data to really improve the status of things. So my first one would be the extent to which the department in the presentation of this data that at times seems technical, particularly if you think about what is the Human Development Index, what is the Gini coefficient. I would think that some work around PR of this very valuable information is required, including using animation, to try and simplify this, to an ordinary person. And I'm just putting that to the minister and the team of the extent to which we can keep, the information about the Mero beyond this particular period, but over time, to release this information to a lay persons to understand what it means, for the increase of teenage pregnancy in a particular municipality. Because I think these are very important, not only for us as policymakers and decision makers, but also for ordinary citizens who must also play part in ensuring that we drive this a type of a province and a country that we desire. So that's what my first contribution, Chair, that I would like to place to the Minister and the team. My second one, which is more of an inquiry and just getting to more understanding more, is that in the net job losses of 137,000 that is being mentioned, that was still has not recovered. Does the data able to tell us that which sectors were those job losses happening? And also in the recovery, even though it is low than the total number, in the recovery, are we seeing recovery in the same sectors, or it's other sectors that are actually, coming in and saving, such losses? And I'm saying this in trying to look at how do we continuously track the quarterly employment data that we are receiving, so that we can actually be able, particularly with the G4G strategy, be able to see what contribution, because some sectors definitely may not necessarily be able to recover in the same way, but there are new sectors. If we think about ICT as future industries, ICT, green economy, that may able to come in and save the day of some maybe industries that will be redundant. So I'm interested in that. The other one that also is of interest is, I think, on the households, because I would have been interested, whilst I hear the presenter making mention about, the household utilizing what is the level, I think the 663, if I'm not mistaken, household grocery measurement or standard. I would have been interested to know whether does the data able to tell us in each province about employment in reference or in addition to that, employment trends per household, across the different regions. Is that something that we can be able to extrapolate further, from the data? If not, can we be directed, even if it's Stats SA data, if that is where such is available? Because that becomes very important, especially as we're speaking about, moving from aggregation to disaggregation of information, so that we can better understand, which are the pockets where extreme household poverty and food poverty is actually found. My last one, Chair, sorry to be long. My last one is around the population growth and also the transport cycle that was shown, which also is about people migrating into our province. And I want to pose this to the Minister, because I think this is one issue that for me is about how are we responsive and agile in as far as planning is concerned. In terms of our transport planning, is the conversation also in our mobility department together with the municipality receiving the necessary urgency and attention, because we see this notion of the transport burden in our roads, and the fact that we must stay on the freeways for an hour or even more. And that actually speaks about productivity of those that are going to work, but also of the industries that must be able to transport goods and services. And I'm asking, given also the geographical or spatial constraint, whether what kind of innovation, if any, or is it something that there is as part of the G4J, and I'm assuming that there would be a conversation about transport planning, which must really be agile in terms of operating licenses for those that must be operating on the roads, to ensure that business in particular is not subjected to undue red tape and slowness in terms of responsive transport planning authorization where it is required. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. Member America.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, thank you, Honourable Nkondlu, for the preface to your input. I support that, and I think it is refreshing to have this regional or district report, so that we. Man, I'm sorry for that. Yeah, let me just start. Okay, thank you, Chairperson, for your indulgence. Now, in certain district chairpersons, it is been sort of highlighted that the poverty rate is above 30%, and in Drakenstein particularly it's about 35%, and that for all of us very concerning, in the sense that we want our residents of the Western Cape to not be sort of confronted with the kind of indigency that they experience. So I would like to know, and you know, in terms of the analysis and in terms of the research, what's the correlation between the poverty rate in particular districts and our school retention sort of rate within that particular district, and what can we do? I know there are many social programs that are being implemented, is to assist those poor families to make sure that the children stay in school for longer. Furthermore, Chairperson, it was mentioned that we need to look at ways of self-financing infrastructure investments to stimulate growth in the province. Now, we know that the declining equitable share and conditional grants to municipalities, and that the infrastructure investment challenges that we face are enormous, and municipalities with their budgets can't support bulk infrastructure that is needed for growth within the various districts. Now, the private sector, as just mentioned, should join hands with us, and I'm sure in many instances they do, and in rural areas, many agricultural sort of organizations also assist. To what extent do we consider going beyond our traditional sort of partners in financing infrastructure, looking at foreign partners that could possibly join hands with the provincial government and certain municipalities to accelerate and perhaps much needed infrastructure investment in the rural areas in particular. Thirdly, Chairperson, I mean, we all know that our economy has structural fault lines that impede accelerated economic development. Now, if those structural fault lines are not addressed, we as a province will not grow as we wish to grow over the medium term. What would we consider to be the easy, and I'd like to phrase it differently, the easy wins for us to mitigate those structural fault lines within the Western Cape? And I know the ports is a major issue within the Western Cape in particular, and not only in the Western Cape but also elsewhere. And Honourable Nkundlu also raised the question of the transportation infrastructure. For us in the Western Cape, what would be quick, realizable ways in which we could remedy, so to speak, the inability of national government to address certain economic questions so that we could accelerate economic growth in the Western Cape in particular. Furthermore, Chairperson, the ongoing war in Ukraine and in the Middle East will have impact, or we did have an impact on the country as well as the Western Cape. Those conflict that exist within the Middle East and in Ukraine are not addressed soon or resolved soon, it will down in the medium term have a significant impact on the growth in the Western Cape. What's the view of the department with regard to these two conflicts that's still unresolved? And my colleague also mentioned about the migration of people to the Western Cape. And we have two types of migration. We have high worth individuals migrating to the Western Cape who contribute enormously towards our growth and job creation. But we also have a number of indigent people migrating to the Western Cape, places huge burdens on our infrastructure as well as our ability to deliver services, particularly in the rural areas. With the projections and the growth of the population as sort of evidence in the latest census, have we considered, how we're going to deal in the medium term with perhaps accelerated migration to the Western Cape, given the fact that we're doing well. People want to migrate to places where there are opportunities, and we provided opportunities. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. Member Klaas.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Chairperson. I'm thankful for you to give me this opportunity to ask some different questions that we need to understand. We are happy about the population census, but the fact that I want to ask on this population census is a population of all of South African citizens together with the foreigners. The reason I ask this question was that if our population has been exposed or has been distributed for us in order for us to know or why there is no separate information of how many people without being the citizens of South Africa that are here. Because when I experience, even in towns, when I experience even in Belva, there's a lot of population of foreigners, but I don't know it's addressed together to this platform. That is the question that I raise in the population of the census. And then to come to other one of food poverty line. And then you highlighted that Drakenstein is close to 38%, Cape Metro 35%, and then the lowest level is in Westenberg 21%, and then Pito and other Cederberg My question is that, how did you determine this poverty? Because did you go house to house? Did you? How does your mechanism come out to this level? Because the question, I raised this one because I know we are most in an informal dwellers. And in Drakenstein, there's a lot of informal dwellers. Cape Metro, Swartland. Now, in order for me, this level of food poverty, how did you come up with it? Then we come to the last one, last question. When you talk about the key implication for policy planning and budgeting, we are worried too much in South Africa about the skill development and education. This is a hidden thing that I do know how you had come out and implement, because the government itself, it gives trainings to the companies. I can give you an example. I was in the municipality in Drakenstein where I became an electrician. All that training were coming from Drakenstein municipality. Now, how did you determine, or why you only determine the skills that come from education, talk about only bachelors, and then you didn't mention that trainings that should be done in municipalities has been completed. NQ level, there's a lot of NQ level that should be done. How far are you, or why you don't come up from us with that one? I thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry for that. I was struggling a bit with connectivity. Member Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and I will join the others in welcoming the report. Comprehensive and helpful as always indeed. And I think it can be a very good instrument we can use in terms of addressing some of our economic challenges. So I have just maybe a couple of questions, but the general one I just want to find out, because I regard this economic, in the municipal economic review as something that is similar that mostly local municipality do, which is kind of their IDP. But in terms of the requirements of their IDPs, they must also conduct a local economic development plan. So I regard this as kind of a tool we can use in assisting the municipalities in advancing and also achieving their economic development plan as actually required by the Constitution, because the municipalities are one of the spheres of government that are required by the Constitution to get involved in local economic development. I just want to check as a general question, to what extent does the department as well as the Department of Local Government interact with each other in assisting municipalities to achieve their local economic development plans in the local area? The second question, again, generic in nature, Chairperson, is there, when we conduct this thing, is it just a desktop exercise, or do we fully actively involve with these municipalities? Or in generally, do we conduct public participation in terms of sensitizing them and say that, look, we are in a process of conducting municipal economic review overview, but now do we conduct any public participation in arriving to some of the reports that we are actually having in front of us? To be more specific then, Chairperson, on some of the question, for example, some of the municipalities that have been identified as they are having economic growth is Langeberg, George, and Canaland. Now, of course, of interest, I think somewhere we also mentioned Beaufort West as well. Are there any specific key economic drivers that drives the economic growth in this town? Because if you look at them, especially the area of Langeberg, Canaland, as well as Beaufort West, what you will recall as small municipalities, you will actually expect some economic growth there, but they are obviously the research shows that there is economic growth there. What is it that drive? What are the key economic drivers in this town that maybe they might be common, but they might be also actually differ in other areas? It might be good. The other question I wanted to have, Chair, you want us to ask 3 questions? Or can I continue, Chair?
Member, you can continue.
Okay.
I didn't actually indicate in the beginning 3 questions, so I think we're going to take our discretion so that you can conclude your questions.
With then the issue of tourism is also indicated there that it's also one of the areas where there is growth in it, especially in the form of short-term accommodation. What is the level of Black economic empowerment that is taking place in this industry? In terms of some of the short-term accommodation, we know is B&B or what is called Airbnb, and even hotels. Has there some ownership shift? Has there been some ownership shift in terms of some of these businesses towards it being owned by previously disadvantaged individual, for example? Is there any improvement in terms of the ownership of some of these businesses by previously disadvantaged individuals? And economic opportunities, I see one of the areas we've mentioned in the Garden Road, we mentioned there are opportunities of oil and gas. I just wanted to check on when it comes to Beaufort West, is the issue of the availability of shale gas there not also been identified as an opportunity? I'm going to stop there, Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm going to, okay, see another hand. Member Murray.
Apologies if this was already asked, Chair, but I was just curious, in the presentation it was mentioned that there is significant growth forecasted for Canaland, Beaufort West, and I believe it was also Witzenberg. I was just curious if we could get more on that. And then also knowing that particularly Canaland and Beaufort West municipalities are not financially healthy, whether this would or could in any way help. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Minister and Ms. Rehnquist, you can allocate the questions accordingly.
Great, thank you. I'll try to take as many questions as I can.
Sorry. Chair, why you didn't ask question, Chair? Why you didn't ask question?
Member class, I know that you are joining us as an extra for budget, but most of the members know I tend to keep my questions for the end. And if other members have already asked what I want to ask, then there's no reason for me to ask the same question twice. So if I do have anything extra, I will ask it at the end. But I thank you for your concern for me. It's really appreciated. Thank you so much. Minister Wenger and team, you may continue.
There we go. All right. Thanks, Chair. So quite a lot of questions. I'll try to take as many as I can, and then I'll ask the team to also fill in, especially on the more technical ones. First, I'd like to thank all the members for their inputs and the compliments in respect of this excellent work that the team has put together. Thanks very much, Honourable Kondlo, for that suggestion of having some kind of animation that would make it easily accessible to members of the public. I think that's really a lovely suggestion, and I'll ask the team to consider maybe we could have some videos for next year's publication. I think that's really a lovely suggestion. I just want to see if there's anything else on the mirror itself. Then there were some questions about how it fits into planning. So, for example, Honourable Mvembi asked about the IDP process. So the mirror is intended to help municipalities use this information to input into their IDP and budget planning processes. We are also trying to make sure that the mirror is socialized as far and wide as possible, which is why we've made it electronically available. Next month, I will be hosting the Provincial Budget and Governance Forum with the municipalities and the MACO members for finance, and we'll be having breakaway sessions by region where they'll have the opportunity to kind of dig into the detail a bit better of what the mirror is telling them. Then in respect of population growth and then, of course, the connected economy and what this means for transport and mobility. So the mirror is, of course, shared with the provincial administration as well, because it helps us to see spatially what's happening in the province. And the provincial departments are also using the mirror to help with their planning to see how does this growth in population, as we've seen in the census, land in the municipal domain. And of course, transport is integral to that. And so the mobility department will have to, of course, use their transport planning based on the growth in population and what that growth looks like in particular areas. So we know George is growing substantially in the city of Cape Town and so on. Which is why public transport is so important to connect people to their opportunities. And we also take the point about congestion in the city of Cape Town, and part of the, and that's why we absolutely have to get rail running as quickly as possible as a kind of backbone for public transport. Then there was also a question from Honourable Klaas in respect of population growth and whether foreign nationals are included in the census figures. I'll just double check, but my understanding is that it does count foreign nationals as well. Then we had a question from Honourable America on the poverty rate versus the school retention rate and any correlations there. Maybe the team would like to expand on that, but we're very, the school feeding scheme for us is extremely important, so that children that are at school receive a meal so that they can study and have the nutrition they need to successfully get through school. So, it is very important that children do stay in school, because not only is it for education outcomes, but particularly where there's high instances of poverty, where children at least get the nourishment from school as well. Then there was a question about self-financing for infrastructure and maybe looking at foreign partners. I think we've got a lot to say there. Maybe Shirley can come in here and talk about the work we're doing on blended financing. Some of the members will also be in the Finance and Economic Opportunities Committee, where we have spoken about this already. But for the benefit of the Budget Committee, I think that would be useful. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the CDAF model that's currently underway. Then under structural constraints, Honourable America, there are no, easy wins. There are some. Many of them, however, have a longer term timeline, but easy wins, for example, would be to increase the efficiency of the port in the short term, and then look at much wider scale capital investment in the ports during the medium to longer term, reforming the visa regime. So there are quite a number of things that South Africa could do in the short term that would help with some of these structural constraints. And many of these are contemplated in the Growth for Jobs strategy. And of course, geopolitical issues do affect the economy of South Africa, which in turn affects the economy of the Western Cape. And we can see how these things impact on inflation. And then, of course, debt and bonds and so on, that the country in South Africa's ability to raise financing. So the world is connected, and geopolitical issues certainly do affect us here in the Western Cape. Then if I could ask the team just to comment on the job losses in specific sectors, and then what we're seeing around skilled employment. There were two questions there, and the shifts in the Western Cape economy, and then why we choose the metrics on bachelor passes and matric pass rates and so on versus skills levels. And then the methodology on measuring the poverty line. Then I think there's also a question on households. If I could ask the team to take that one on. Then on Honourable Vimbi's question on public participation. So much of the, so there's quite a number of different metrics that come from different sources. Some of them do come from surveys, which are, basically members of the public that are canvassed for these surveys, which are then collated. Tax data obviously comes from members of the public and so on and so forth. But now then when we collate it into this document, that then goes out into the public domain, and along with the PERO forms part of our budget process, and we do have a public participation leg of the budget in its totality. Then there were just some questions on whether shale gas was contemplated for Beaufort West, if the team could just comment on that, and then the growth prospects for Kannaland, Beaufort West and Witzenberg. So maybe I could hand over to Nadia and or Shirley.
Yes, thank you, Minister, and thank you, Chair and members. This is an incredibly exciting discussion, and the discussion is very affirming to the team because it is showcasing exactly the objective that the team set out in preparing and doing the work on the mirror. And that's to start drawing out data and analytics in a way that starts to ask the very fundamental questions as to what are we trying to address, and have we got the right policy solutions to address that? So this kind of debate is incredibly encouraging, and thank you very much for members for your time in this discussion, as well as the time that we know that it takes to work through and read through the publications. I want to start off, Chair, Minister and members, in respect of the question on the SARS data, which sectors we could see created jobs and which shared jobs. Taking a step back, I would like to ask members to please take the time to use the QR code and go and spend time drilling down on the spatial tax database. This is a unique innovation in the South Africa data landscape and has taken 10 years to get to this point. So from about 2013-14, a lot of the municipalities started engaging on this kind of administrative database because we don't have a lot of subnational level data that is not modeled. And so this administrative data that is drawn through from all of our company tax and IRP5s and anonymized has been put out by National Treasury and geocoded. The Western Cape is the first province and the first subnational, together with the city of Cape Town and eThekwini, in taking this data and really starting to examine it. It does show the sectors of where jobs were created and where jobs were lost at the municipal and at the town level. And so each town, when you go into the spatial tax database itself, you're able to see the metrics and the unique sectors. Now, what we can see is that load shedding and logistics, for instance, are having incredible impact on manufacturing broadly. We're seeing a revivance of the agriculture, but particularly on the informal sector. So it would be useful for members, if you have time, to go into that innovation, because this is where we're really going to be driving a lot of the analytics, and it is incredibly user friendly. In moving down to the question on blended financing, or in financing, what are we doing on self-financing? My colleague Stephen Kenyon is also on the call, and Malcolm Boyson. Jointly, we are engaging in the Minister's Budget for Governance Forum with the municipalities next week. And part of it is to start moving forward and saying, how do we budget for growth? And that in migration, on another question, happens at both levels. It's an incredibly exciting phase in South Africa. We are in a rapid urbanization phase that is expected to continue into at least 2030 to 2040, where 80% of South Africans will be said to be living in urban areas, with the Western Cape and Gauteng the prime attractors. So what we do know from urbanization is it is happening both at the or semi-migration trends of high-income individuals coming into the Western Cape, and individuals at the lower income level migrating for better service delivery. And that generates both challenges, but as well as opportunities. What we do know is that when municipalities examine their information and they forward plan, it is possible to forward plan and take the benefits of this urbanization trend. In starting to move towards exciting financing possibilities, the Western Cape and the municipalities are exploring potential of blended financing. And blended financing is simply a catch-all phrase for looking at how we join private sector financing, donor financing, development finance or development bank financing, and government financing into the same pot, so that we can scale up infrastructure spend in particular. And there is work with our the colleagues in the Department of Local Government on the CDF program. This is the Sustainable Development Infrastructure Financing Facility, where we are engaging on the water and wastewater areas, in particular of the growth municipalities. And we are also working with our colleagues in the energy team on looking at the municipal pool buying facility and engaging with the World Bank in terms of drawing on their technical assistance as to how can we lever up donor financing as well as private sector financing for energy and procurement, particularly from independent power producers. So these are quite exciting models. They do take time to realize, but there is a lot of excellent work that is coming into play and will be presented to the committee in due course. The last question that I'm going to take before I hand over to Ms. Nadia Rinquist and the team for their technical is in respect of the correlation of data sets. Member Nkondlo, you talked to being able to track households and look at household employment and household poverty. So the data sets are largely drawn from Statistics South Africa survey data, and they're modeled using Quantec as a data provider down to the local level. This means that there is not a tracking of individual households, as that requires a tracking on administrative data level and usually on an ID identifier. South Africa hasn't gone to that extent yet, but we are able to see the trends emerging from the different survey pictures, and we're able to track the trends largely by income level of households, although not those specific households. And that data is presented in the mirror. The team will talk to noting the aspects on food poverty and on wage distribution and employment in particular. Can I pass over, Nadia, to yourself for a number of the technical questions, just bearing in time, if you can see which ones that we can answer in the next 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shirley. Yes, definitely, members. I really appreciate the questions. And it's a pity that we couldn't do the presentation at the district and the municipal level, because when you drill down into the detail, it will answer a lot of the questions that has been asked today. So I do appreciate the questions, because it is asking those questions that we are trying to answer within the district books. For instance, I'm looking at the CKD book right now, and on page 39, members, if you've got your copies of your books, you can see which sectors gained jobs, which specific sectors were the ones that contributed to job gains within the CKD for the data period, and which sectors specifically the jobs were lost in. So you can definitely see where the recovery is coming from, and if any of that is coming from areas in which jobs were lost in. Then, as mentioned before, we don't correlate food poverty and employment levels. We speak about it separately in the mirror, because that's two different data sets that we're using. So we would have to determine some sort of model to be able to work out the correlation between those two. Moving on to where the data comes from. So we specifically with the food poverty data, we don't go house to house, but we do source our data from Quantech, who uses Stats SA data, who does several surveys, and those are such as general household surveys to estimate poverty levels in the municipal area. So what we do is member Mvimbi, I think, asked that question, or member Klaas, is that we do a survey specifically to the municipalities with this data, and we ask them several questions to correlate the data, to inform us if there are any big businesses that have closed down, that have opened up, if there are any new trends within the municipal area within that year that we need to be aware of, the immigration trends. So there are several questions that we ask each specific municipality within a survey, and then we use that specific information in the mirror as well. Then moving on to skills development and the training, and why we use bachelor's pass rates. This information we get from, so the bachelor's pass rate data is not university private level data, it's the Western Cape Education Department data, so it's actually just matric outcome data. So we are not using data coming from any NQF levels, whether it be any sorts of skills training. We can look at in the future if there are any other education indicators that we want to include. We have skills levels in municipality, how people are qualified, or whether they're lower skill levels or mid or high skill level population in those specific municipal areas, but we don't specifically have it by NQF level. Then with regards to LED plans and IDPs, we do work very closely with our sister departments, DLG, as well as Department of Economic Development and Tourism. They are the department that's responsible for supporting on local economic development plans, and we have been speaking to them about further incorporating this data into their support to municipalities. But if you open any municipality's IDP, Mvimbi, or you will see the Mero reflected front and foremost, because this is the main intention of the Mero, first and foremost, was to be a support to our clients, which are municipalities who don't have capacity to do this research themselves. So every municipality in the Western Cape, potentially bar the City of Cape Town, because they do have their own research as well, will either be using the Mero in their IDPs, or they will use our socioeconomic profile, which is our data that's disaggregated to a municipal level. So one of those you will find reflected in every of the 29 IDPs in the Western Cape. And then with regards to Member Murray's question, just on the growth in the smaller municipalities. So Witzenberg, for instance, has been growing strong for a few years now, but it's also because of its strong agricultural value chain. But municipalities that come off a smaller base will show bigger initial growth than bigger municipalities. So you will see the Witzenbergs, you'll see the Kanalans, you'll see the Beauforts showing strong growth, especially when they've had a contraction before. In their recovery, they will grow sharper at first, but they will eventually normalize and the line will be balanced. So for instance, like Prince Albert is very small. So coming off their small base, you will see a stronger projection. But if that economic growth is coupled with employment growth, then you should see the growth starting to have a positive impact on the well-being of the municipalities. And then on the shale gas matter that was brought up, I think by Member Mvimbi, we don't say that shale gas is a specific opportunity because of the environmental implications associated with shale gas, but we do mention it that it is an untapped resource in the CKD at the moment, and it does have a comparative advantage in the area of shale gas. We also note several opportunities for renewable energy in the CKD, and we speak about current applications that's in the process for such development. So the actual book is a wealth of knowledge, honorable members. I can promise you it makes a very interesting reading, and if you dig down into the detail, you will find the answers to a lot of the questions that was brought up today. Thank you, Honorable Chair. That's all from me.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, it is 10:20, so I'm going to allow for follow-up questions as we do have second matters also to deal with in the committee. We do also have the respective regional books, both online and or in person, if you were in the sitting yesterday, in order to drill down. I'm particularly interested to try and figure out some of these statistics from my own constituency in Laingsburg, where, for example, malnutrition in the book indicated went from 1.5 per 100,000 persons in terms of under 5 years old for children to 2022, 13.8. So those are the type of statistics in my constituency, for example, that I'm interested in, and those are things that we can pose even in the respective standing committees. I'm taking any follow-ups now. If none, then I would like to firstly thank the Minister and the team. Oh, I see a hand going up, Member Nkondlo.
Chair, sorry to have raised my hand after you've almost concluded. I would put it to you, Chair, to help us, given the fact that the time is always a challenge in these. One, we only received the books last night, and sometimes it's very difficult to manage to go through all of them by the time that today's presentation is done. I would have loved to receive the presentation on the individual regions as the department will have presented. I'm not sure if there is any innovation, given that we'll be dealing with budgets for this whole week, if time do allows, even if we ask for just a 15 or 30 minutes in that time. And I'm just throwing that suggestion to you as our chairperson, but if not any other way, because I think that will help, because whilst I could read on my own the book, the challenge of getting the insight from the colleagues would always be a limitation. So I just wanted to raise that as something that I think is just of importance, of indeed drilling with the department on the individual regions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. I think what we can do is we can engage the programming authority to find out if we could have some extra time within our program regarding unpacking some of the regional information. I don't think there's a problem with that. Usually what occurs is we have the MERO presentation in Budget Committee directly after the sitting. This is the first year actually that we are doing it the next day. So it's actually the first time that members have the opportunity between day 1 and day 2 to actually go through some of the documentation. But I take the point, and we can engage the programming authority for some extra time to unpack some of the matters. Are there any other follow-up questions? Okay, if none, thank you so much to the Minister and to Team Finance for assisting us with the respective information. It is a lot, I understand that, but the members of budget are not risk averse when it comes to reading documents. And I'm sure that not only will they be reading it in their budget hat capacities, but we will also reading it in our constituency head capacities in order to try and figure out what exactly is it that we can do to assist with some of these problems. When I read the increase in teenage pregnancies of 19.1% in Laingsburg, I think to myself, what do we need to do? When I read about the malnutrition in my constituency being at 13%, when I see that out of the over 11,000 people living in Laingsburg, 8,418 are indigent households amounting to 74.05%. When I see that there's only been 136 job gains net in Laingsburg in the past 2022 estimate, when so many wind farms have been coming in, those are the particular questions that as a constituency I'm going to have to go sit and battle with and try and figure out on which door do I need to go knock for help. And I thank Team Finance for being able to put this information together for us, because without the data and without the evidence, we won't necessarily know where those problem areas are that we need to focus more on. We might be focusing on X when we should be focusing more on Y. So really, thank you so much and for the hard work. It could not have been easy putting all of this together. But with that, you are welcome to go about your day-to-day business. The committee will be continuing on with the consideration of the report as well as consideration of legislation before us. You're welcome to stay on if you wish, but you are adjourned.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much to members of the committee.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, please do stay online as we need to formally consider the report on the Meadow. As you may remember, colleagues, we don't need to vote yes or no on the Municipal Economic Review and Outlook. We are simply noting its briefing and consideration before us. And we can always include the 2 recommendations/resolutions relating to the animation and possible innovation when it comes to promoting the Meadow, as well as engaging with Programming Authority for more time to unpack some of the regional information. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, if you could put the draft report up for us, please. Okay, let's have a look. If you could just make it a little bit bigger for me, please. Okay. Okay, so the draft report would read, Report of the Budget Committee having considered the Municipal Economic Review and Outlook 2023-2024, dated 24 November 2023 as follows. The Budget Committee reports that it convened on 24 November 2023, that is today, and has concluded its deliberations on the Western Cape Government Municipal Economic Review and Outlook 2023-24 referred to it. And that's just my details at the bottom for signature. Okay. Colleagues, is there a mover for the report? Member Murray and Member America.
Move that we adopt. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Support, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, as well as Member Mkondlo. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We will thus now move on to the next matter on our agenda. Let me just quickly open up our agenda here, which deals with consideration and adoption of the negotiating mandate report on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, Section 76 NCOP. The procedural officer have sent out the inputs that we received by 7 o'clock, as well as the public participation matrix in terms of yesterday's public participation. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, perhaps if you could just put the public participation matrix up for us first, and then the members who sent in inputs can take us through the inputs for consideration. I'm just going to mute everyone else in the meantime, just so that we can avoid any background noise. Okay. So colleagues, you will notice that our public participation matrix is only one page, as we had one stakeholder that made public comments, and the summary reads as follows, and it is also attached to the presentation that they sent us. The summary reads as follows: to ensure no cuts to infrastructure grants, they asked avoid increasing VAT, preserve health and education social sector grants, especially within the current fiscal year, involve human rights experts in budget discussions for conditional grants, create more budget documents that are child-friendly and easier to understand, develop child-friendly tools like Instagram, TikTok, etc. to enhance children's understanding of the budget, advocate for rational decisions regarding early childhood development cuts, question the national commitment to child's right within the budgetary allocations. Colleagues, I'm first going to ask that we consider the public participation input before we go to members' submissions. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, if you can just keep it up, please, just so the members are able to speak to it. Okay, I see Member America's hand.
Chairperson, thank you. Am I recognized?
Yes, you may go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Chairperson, we note and commend the presentation and the input of the Children's Commissioner in this particular process. I think it is very useful. We hope that, more stakeholders could make some meaningful inputs in terms of the division of revenue bills that we're considering. And I think that the issues raised are very important issues, and that we should, in terms of the DA submission, that we should incorporate, we have incorporated some of these issues in our response to the bill. With that, Chairperson, I'm delighted that the Children Commissioner came forward and informed us about the challenges they experience, and with the diminishing financial resources available to us, that we should advance the plight also in terms of our response. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. I was also quite delighted regarding the Children's Commissioner office coming to make input. We have, throughout our term, really been trying to make finance fun again, and I think people are starting to realize the impact budget and budgeting has on service delivery. I see Member Mvimbi's purple bubble. Member Mvimbi, I'm not sure if you want to go ahead regarding the public participation.
On the public participation, definitely, Chairperson, we support it. It was very well welcomed, and how I wish also if this can be replicated in other committees as well, especially that it was the Children's Commission. It was actually quite an eye-opener on how they actually approach and view issues, especially in terms of their involvement and also in terms of addressing some of the issues that has to do with the rights of the children.
Thank you so much. Is everyone then in agreement that we make sure that these comments are then captured within our negotiating mandate? I'm not dealing now with the consideration of the mandate. I'm just dealing with the public participation comments.
Agreed, Chair.
Yeah, Chairperson.
Yes, Member Mvimbi.
Yes, I will, of course, definitely support that. Can we actually separate then the public participation proposal to our proposals as political parties that we are going to be submitting?
Yes, Member Vimbi, as indicated in the beginning, I'm just dealing with the public participation comments now, and then I will deal with inputs that were either received and or from members. So we are currently separating the two. So I'm asking now what the Children's Commissioner said. Can we please include that? Or are there any objections?
No objection, Chairperson.
Okay, so what we'll do is Ms. Kamish Ahmad is going to make sure that we are writing that into nice English so that we can deal with that. Can we please then put up the next submission that we received? While we wait for the next submission to be loaded, Member Mvimbi, do you want to make oral submissions? Because you indicated the submissions by members, just so I can note it quickly before I deal with the written submission received.
No, we're not going to make a submission, Chairperson, just to say that maybe beforehand that we support the bill.
Okay, no, that's fine. Don't worry. We'll get to the supporting now. You're running ahead of me.
No,
Okay.
sorry, Chairperson.
No problem. The members of the Democratic Alliance sent in a written submission, and Member America and Member Murray will be taking us through the respective submission. Let us quickly just make it a bit bigger. Okay. Perfect. We will begin. I'm not sure Member America or Member Murray who will go first in terms of speaking us through the submission for our... Yes, Member Mvimbi?
Can I propose that, it's also maybe in view of course, I know the time is still on our side, because this was submitted prior. I think all of us in the committee have seen it, rather than actually taking the members in all the trouble of having to read and talk through the issues. We just take it as read. That will be my proposal, Chairperson, unless the members feel that they still want to do that.
No problem. What I'll do is I'm going to leave it up to Member America and Member Murray. Perhaps they can just highlight the important parts. And if members have specific matters that they would like to speak to, that might assist us in ensuring that we don't read through every single word, for example. Member America?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. I appreciate your suggestions. I would go along with it, but certainly there are certain, at least then we can deal with the recommendations, because there are certain additions that I would like to make to the recommendations. And if that's okay with the committee, then we can do that. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. I haven't heard anyone wanting to make oral submissions, so there is time to put oral submission into this, but let us quickly just deal with all the written matters, and then we will, if we need to add oral matters, then we can include that. Thank you. Member America, you may continue.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, in terms of what Honourable Mvimbi was saying, that I don't think that we should go verbatim through the entire report. I will focus on additional matters that one could include under the recommendations. If I, go there.
No problem. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, if you can just then go to the recommendation section then of Member America.
And I can say from the outset that we as the Democratic Alliance, we do not support the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, and there are cogent reasons as to why we do not support the bill. And the first reason that's listed there is that the 1.7 billion rand increase in the Western Cape's provincial equitable share allocation is not sufficient to cover the costs of the centrally agreed public wage sector increase for the province by the national government, which amounts to 2.9 billion rand. Service delivery, Chairperson, is being crowded out by the public wage increase, which means that the provincial government will have to cut frontline services to cover the shortfall of the centrally agreed wage increase. So therefore it is recommended that the national government must fully fund, as what was expected at the time of the main appropriation, the funding of the public wage sector increase agreement in this current bill for all the provinces and not only for the Western Cape. By not fully funding the public wage sector increase agreement for all provinces, the national government is forcing provincial governments to cut provincial budgets in order to fund the shortfall for the centrally agreed public sector wage increase agreement. Secondly, Chairperson, the cuts to conditional grants for provincial and local governments are excessive and damaging to the service delivery capabilities of these governments. There's a real danger of overspending by provinces due to these cuts. And we have sort of learned that the KwaZulu-Natal legislature will severely overspend on their budgets as a direct result of these cuts, which in turn can lead to provinces being placed under administration by the national government, which will deal a blow to democratic governance and the legitimacy of such governments. It is therefore recommended that conditional grants are not cut in year, and that the National Treasury should instead source these funds from the national government budget instead of cutting local governments and provincial government budgets. Further, it is recommended not to cut conditional grants to the City of Cape Town, and in particular increase the City of Cape Town's Urban Settlement Development Grant, Informal Settlements Development Grant, and few levy allocations. Not cutting conditional grants in here is also in line with the public participation comments received in this committee. Third, cuts to infrastructure grants, such as the educational infrastructure grant, are especially worrying, as infrastructure represents an investment in the future of the province. Infrastructure projects often take place over a number of financial years, with projects needing stability over a number of years to be completed successfully. The cuts to these grants means that there is a risk of some projects that there's a risk that, where am I now? I just lost myself in the maze. Infrastructure projects often take over a number of years, and some projects that are already in progress not being completed. The long life cycle of infrastructure-related grants must be taken into account. It is therefore recommended that National Treasury do not make any in-year budget cuts to conditional grants affecting infrastructure, as this risk halting projects midway, and that these funds should be sourced from the national government budget instead of cutting local government and provincial government budgets. In particular, given the rights such as the right to basic education, Section 29 of the Constitution, is an immediately realizable right, there is currently no justification in cutting the budgets for education infrastructure grant and that for early childhood. This is also in line with the public participation comments received by the committee. Fourthly, Chairperson, certain conditional grants have been around for years, with the result that provinces and local government depend on these grants when they set up their budgets and they plan the programs as contained in their integrated development plans for the financial year. It is therefore recommended that the conditional grants directly linked to provincial government mandates should rather be incorporated into the provincial equitable share formula and form part of the provincial equitable share division of revenue for provinces. In particular, conditional grants related to education, health, and social sector mandates should not be cut. And this is in line with our public participation comments received in this committee. Fifthly, the population data that was used to calculate the provincial equitable share is outdated, Chairperson. As was confirmed in the latest census data released this year, the Western Cape government, the Western Cape, has moved from the 5th most populated province to the 3rd most populated province. The Western Cape also objects to the admission from National Treasury that the newest data will not be used for the next main budget. That's very worrying, Chairperson. That's due in February next year. Certainly cannot be. It is therefore recommended that the incorporation of data, particularly the ongoing migration to the Western Cape and the population statistics, should be incorporated in the main budget for its implementation in February 2024. Sixthly, the provincial equitable share, Chairperson, per capita also shows a favor towards more rural provinces. And while this is understandable to an extent, it does not differentiate between areas where poorer persons reside and areas which are considered rural in more geographical terms. And we know that the majority of poor people that rely on government services are based in the metro, in urban areas. And this current bias does not seem to be properly taken into account in the provincial equitable share formula. Chairperson, it is thus recommended that this metric is reviewed and instead take into account where the most poor persons reside in the province, and that's in the metro. Seventh, in terms of the 1.4 billion rand declared underspending in local government equitable share, it is recommended to reallocate these back to local governments in South Africa to relieve local municipalities of the impact of these budget cuts in this bill. So in line with public participation comments received, it is therefore recommended that the budget system, budget process, budget legislation on both a national and provincial sphere of government level is made more child-friendly to understand and engage with. For example, more infographics, TikTok posts, and Instagram reels to explain the respective line items of budgets and implications here in simple terms that children could understand. And we in line with the public participation comments we received. So therefore, in line with our public participation comments received, it's therefore recommended that National Treasury includes experts in respective sectors to comment on the human rights legal impact of cutting respective conditional grants. 10th, in line with the public participation comment received, it is therefore recommended that National Treasury does not increase VAT. Further, it is recommended that National Treasury reduces the VAT burden on a larger basket of food items in order to reduce the impact of the increased cost of living on consumers. Furthermore, Chairperson, I would also state that for a long period, National Treasury failed to manage the twin deficit, the budget deficit and the fiscal deficit, that are both at unsustainable levels over the medium-term expenditure framework. This is the making of a bad budget, Chairperson. Furthermore, Chairperson, borrowing does not flow to capital expenditure to create much needed jobs in the economy, but is rather spent on current expenditure. And that is an unsustainable way of doing things. 13th, the DORA does not promise fiscal decentralization, where actual services are delivered, provinces, municipalities, but promote fiscal centralization at the cost of provinces and municipalities. Furthermore, Chairperson, provinces and municipalities had to find alternative funding to deal with the budget pressures caused by load shedding, and which is the making of national government's inability to manage the energy crisis. We've spoken about the centralization of the wage agreement, and the Western Cape did not agree at that stage with the above inflation wage agreement and cannot be held accountable for decisions taken by national government within the bargaining council. So, furthermore, Chairperson, I would like to add that the DPSA has not produced a plan as to how it will reduce the size of the public service, as this is central to the fiscal crisis that we experience, and it was highlighted in the first recommendation of this report. Therefore, Transnet, if we look at this, the Transnet is borrowing about 1 billion rand a day, and there is not any visible improvements, and yet receives significant allocations in the DORA without creating public value. On the contrary, the harbours are all dysfunctional and will cost South Africa dearly in relation to foreign exchange earnings. Less exports means less foreign currency earnings. Furthermore, Chairperson, the DORA does not create significant space for greater private sector involvement, despite public announcements by the national government. Greater private sector involvement will reduce the fiscal pressures on the overall budget, and it should be encouraged, Chairperson. Furthermore, the budget and the fiscal crisis in the DORA is a direct result of bad and outdated public policy choices, and there are no signs of deviating from these anti-growth policy choices. Furthermore, Chairperson, as we have stated, over time, devolving certain powers to provinces and capable metros with the necessary capacity will lead to greater inefficiencies. Thus, the Western Cape supports the principles of subsidiarity and allocative efficiencies, which is not contained in the DORA future forecasting. And therefore, Chairperson, having said all of that, it is impossible for the Democratic Alliance to support the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2023 in its current form. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. I see you've paid your written and your oral comments. So what I'll do is I'll just conclude everyone's oral comments as well, and then we will deal with administration. Member Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just have some comments which speak to essentially what has been submitted by the member. So I think the first thing I would just like to touch on is a proposal that we amend the sentence on putting provinces under administration and changing the bias in the PES rurality to possibly using the word favor. Then on page 1, just a suggestion, but I do think the report submitted or the negotiating mandate submitted is very comprehensive, that we could maybe include an introduction and overview of the bill with any significant changes from previous budgets. For page 2, we could possibly detail the specific allocations for various departments or initiatives and any changes from the previous estimates. On page 3, just to note, and again, this is quite general, that we could maybe have a more detailed breakdown of the allocations and the justifications previously used for those amounts, as well as comparisons with previous periods. I think that comparison with previous periods is quite helpful for us understanding the changes. Page 5, this is regarding the table, which provides quite a clear breakdown of the conditional allocations to various grants and programs. However, Chair, I think that we could possibly include a more detailed explanation for the significant decreases which were observed in the programs. For example, the Human Settlements Development Grant, which shows a negative 12.6% change. Page 6, Chair, the specific purpose allocations to municipality sections. I believe this is very straightforward and could maybe be enhanced with a narrative explaining the reasons behind the specific increases or decreases in allocation, particularly that are notable from the previous year. Page 7, this page presents allocations to municipalities, and I think it would be helpful if the negotiating mandate could include a brief description of impacts these allocations will have on respective municipalities, especially where there are reductions. Page 8, so the uniformity in allocation to various municipalities might raise some questions about the criteria used for these allocations. This is a question for me of whether they're based on population, need, or another metric. I think it's important to clarify this to highlight any further observations as to whether to support or not to support. Then page 9, here we see the adjustments in the expanded public works program and integrated grant for municipalities. I think one observation that could be made on the uniform percentage decrease across different municipalities could be helpful. And we could also include feedback questioning if this is a flat rate reduction and whether this is reflective of the unique needs and circumstances of each municipality, and if not, whether a more nuanced approach could maybe be suggested in our submission. Page 10, here the allocations to various municipalities are listed. I think it would be beneficial if they included the explanations provided for any significant changes, such as the consistent minus 5.6% decrease across many entries. The rationale behind these decreases would also be useful to understand. And if we don't have that, I think it's also worth asking for that rationale. Page 11. So this page essentially continues with the infrastructure grant to municipalities, similar to the previous pages. I think a consistent percentage decrease is observed here. And so again, feedback and justification for the decreases and how they align with the strategic objectives for infrastructure within these municipalities. Page 12, municipal infrastructure grant shows a negative 6.7% decrease across various municipalities. I think it would be important for us to ask if these decreases will impact any critical infrastructure projects. Today, but again, in writing, I think it's helpful as well. Page 13, here we examine allocations under the Energy Efficiency and Demand Side Management Grant and the Integrated National Electrification Program. There are significant reductions in allocations. So, for example, the 76.9% reduction in Swartland under the electrification program. And I think these should be accompanied by explanations as well. So here maybe asking for information. And the feedback used could highlight the need for clarity on how these cuts align with energy efficiency and electrification goals. Page 14, here we're looking at Rural Roads Assessment Management Systems grant. Again, feedback could focus on adequacy of these grants in maintaining and improving rural roads infrastructure, especially in light of any decreases. We could look again on what was allocated in previous financial years. Page 15, Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant and Water Services Infrastructure Grant. Given the crucial nature of water infrastructure, and we see this particularly in climate change, we see this with changing weather patterns, I think it would be helpful to get feedback on the impact of any funding decreases on delivery of water services and on regional bulk infrastructure projects. Page 16, here we're looking at the Integrated Urban Development Fund and Informal Settlements Upgrading. So it'd be helpful if feedback could focus on whether the allocations meet the growing needs for urban development and informal settlement upgrades, especially in the context of urbanization, housing demands, and immigration, which we spoke about previously. Then, Chair, finally, page 21, integration of conditional grants. So the negotiating mandate suggests that conditional grants should be incorporated into the provincial equitable share formula. Perhaps if we could get some feedback or add feedback on the importance of flexibility and targeted funding that conditional grants offer, while acknowledging the stability incorporation into the main budget might provide. Public participation and clarity. I think the recommendation for child-friendly budget is innovative. And I think our feedback could also emphasize the value of making financial information accessible to all ages and all groups who may as well be differently abled or have other linguistic challenges. Emphasizing the potential long-term benefits of educating young people and being more inclusive in our government or governing process for budget. Then use of updated population data. So the negotiating mandate does note the importance of using updated population data for budget considerations. I think in our feedback, we might praise the focus on using current data or condemn, whichever we feel more appropriate to inform budget decisions. And also we should reflect in changes in population distribution, ensuring that funds are allocated where they are most needed. And I think this ties in, Chair, quite nicely with the mention again on immigration. Then underspending in local government's equitable share. So we noted that the negotiating mandate addresses underspending. And I think also just maybe mentioning that it recommends reallocating these funds to local government. So in our feedback, we could stress the need to understand the reasons behind underspending before reallocation. Second last, VAT recommendations. So the recommendation to not increase VAT and reduce the VAT burden on food items is obviously made in light of the impact on consumers and rising inflation. And perhaps some feedback that we could add here is focusing on the attention to consumer welfare and possibly also suggesting a detailed analysis of the potential economic impact of such tax adjustments. And then finally, Chair, human rights impact assessment. The call for human rights legal impact assessment of budget cuts, I think, is a very significant and important point. Some feedback here that we might request or add is just suggesting the establishment of a formal process for such assessments to ensure that budget decisions actually do uphold human rights standards. With that mouthful, Chair, thank you very much. I'm happy to also send this across in writing.
Yes, please, if you can just forward that to the procedural officer. I think majority that I've noted are requests for information, but we can put the request for information in the document. And the explanations on the matters, I think those are in the memorandum of the bill, majority of them. We can always just copy and paste those in. Okay, next I see Member Brinkhuisen's hand.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, the Al Jamaa, we support the Division of Revenue Bill. And yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran that la in shakartum la azidannakum. That if you want your blessings to be increased in your provisions, then you must show appreciation. The more appreciation a person shows to what he receives, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more God will bless you with abundance. And further, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. If a person receives his allot and he doesn't show appreciation, then beware. The punishment of your Lord is very severe. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for your input. Are there any other oral inputs that we need to consider or note? Okay, in the meantime, while we are able to just try to get all of our fancy English together then, in the meantime, Miss Kamish Ahmed, I just want to check. I'm noting here that the NCOP meeting for the negotiating mandate is only going to be on Monday at 12:30, which means we're going to have to move our final mandate meeting that we were planning for that morning, given that we cannot sit until they have sat. So my request would be, Ms. Kamish Ahmed, and you must now advise me whether this is possible, that given the NCOP meeting only happening then, could we take the comments then from the members? We can indicate from the members now what their support is for the bill in general. I just want to check, are we allowed to do that and then you put it together and send it as a round robin to us, or do we need to wait for you quickly to put it all together and then put it? I just need some advice on that regard quickly, please.
Chairperson, if the committee adopts the comments that was tabled and orally submitted, they can adopt it in principle, and then we can just do the round robin, and so the report is actually adopted in principle if members all agree to it in this meeting.
Okay, so the process would then be essentially that what was said and submitted gets included, with yourself using your fancy English. And then we would have to formally just say if we support or do not support. And then you could then send us the final, just so that we can check that the fancy English and what we said is the same. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct, Chairperson.
Okay. Members, are you in order with that before I put the consideration?
Agreed, Chair.
Supported, Chair.
Member Mvimbi and Member
Agreed, Chair.
Brankes?
Chairperson?
Are you in order with the process before I put the consideration?
Yes. No
Okay.
problem, Chairperson.
Okay, so we will follow that process then. Member Brankes?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, it's in order, Chair. It's in order with the process. Thank you.
Okay, so I will then start with, in principle, adopting the comments written and orally and received into the document. I'm not dealing with the vote now, I'm dealing with the comments on the bill and the recommendation / request for information.
Support, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Member America. Any
Supported,
others?
Chair.
Okay, thank you, Member Murray. Any others? Okay, I also support including the respective comments. Are there any others? Member Mimbi, I saw your purple bubble, but I didn't hear what you said. If you could just maybe repeat yourself.
No. I'm fine, Chair. I still have the view support. I support the bill.
Okay, so you're going to come in when we support the bill. You're not bothered about the comments right now. Okay, cool. Then those respective comments. Okay, Member Brankes is in support of the respective comments being included. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So the oral and written comments will then be included. Ms. Kamish Ahmad, you must just please assist us with your fancy English. Member Marie will also be sending hers in writing, which she already tabled orally as well. Member America, maybe if you can just send the bullet points of your oral remarks that you added to your written comments to Ms. Kamish Ahmed, that would also be helpful, please. Okay, now Ms. Kamish Ahmed, we are going to the tabling of the vote. Am I correct?
Correct, Chairperson. I think all members have already indicated if they support or not support. But if you want to read the report for...
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it again formally just so that we deal with it in that particular manner. Colleagues, I'm now putting the consideration of the vote on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill B33 of 2023, Section 76, as received by the NCOP. If members could please indicate their position.
Support,
Chairperson.
Chair.
Okay, I heard Member Brinke's indicating support, and then I see Member America's hand.
Not support, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I see Member Murray's hand.
Cannot support, Chair.
Okay.
Chairperson,
Yes, Member Mvimbi.
I support the bill.
Okay, no problem. And then just from myself, I do not support the bill. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, could you thus, in terms of those votes, just put up the draft report for us, please? Which will be going collated in one document with all of our recommendations, etc. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, are you able to share it, or?
I am, Chair. My computer's just freezing. Apologies.
Okay, no problem. Your computer might be thinking it's Friday.
Chair, I'm not sure if it's showing, but my screen keeps like switching off and switching on. Is it showing?
It's showing on my side.
Okay, thanks.
So you can just take the word draft out then in the first sentence and capitalize the R. Then let me just have a look here. And we said there were 3 not support, so we're not supporting. And then you need to include a third paragraph. The third paragraph is for the 2 that support. There were 2 minority views, so you just need to include that. Okay, you take the words not support out in the third paragraph. And then in the second paragraph, at the end of to not support the bill, can you write comma with recommendations included? Full stop. Okay, let's just have a look here that all the numbers are correct. B33, 2023, 24 November, yes, yes. Okay. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to now read the negotiating mandate report, and then I will put the report to the members. Negotiating mandate stage report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue. Oh, we must write amendment bill. Just put the word amendment in, please, in both those. Okay, perfect. I'll start again. Negotiating mandate stage, report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill B33 2023 NCOP dated 24 November 2023 as follows. The Budget Committee, having considered the subject of Division of Revenue Amendment Bill B33 2023 NCOP referred to it in accordance with Standing Rule 217, confers on the Western Cape's delegation in the NCOP the authority to not support the bill, with recommendations included. In terms of Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress and Al Jamaa express its minority view to support the bill. Members, is this a correct reflection of your votes and information? If I could have a mover then.
Correct, Chair, and I move that we adopt the report.
Thank you, Member America. If I could have a seconder for the report.
A second, Chair.
Thank you so much. The report is thus adopted. Ms. Kamish Ahmad, can I just ask, how much time do you need to put everything into fancy English?
Chair, if you can just give me an hour to finalize everything, and then I will send it to yourself and members for input. And yeah.
Okay. My advice is that you send it then to us by 1 o'clock. I know you said an hour, but let us give you until 1 o'clock. And then in that 1 o'clock email, you will ask members to send approval by 2 o'clock. Members, is that in order?
In order,
Chair?
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay, just so we can make sure that the fancy English of the report and our English in the meeting all coincides. Thank you so much.
Chairperson, Member Brink is here. I'm sure you are aware today is Friday, and this is the holy day of the Muslim community. And I heard you just said now that you will give us till from 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock. Now that is the exact hour that we are as Muslims in the mosque on this Holy Friday. Could you please maybe just extend it for another hour to give me also opportunity to
No
peruse
problem.
those? If you could extend it to 3 o'clock, I'll highly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No problem. I think that is a reasonable request. Ms. Kamish Ahmad, is that in order? That members then send after 1 o'clock their comment, the approval of the wording in by 3. Okay, I see a little hand going up saying yes. So that is in order. 3 o'clock it is. Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for reminding us again of that. It's appreciated. Ms. Kamish Ahmad, I just want to see, is there any other committee business that we need to deal with today?
Chair, I'm just going to flight the 3rd of November's. We just yesterday, the committee resolved to let the minutes stand over. So we can just
Okay.
adopt those.
Okay, no problem. We can flight those. Okay, so that is the 3rd of October. Okay, members can just check their attendance. Okay, that's page 1 dealing with AXA, as well as the annual report process. And then we also had one set of minutes of the 21st of September. Are there any edits to the minutes? And if none, if I could have a mover for the report or the minutes? I think it's myself and Member Mvimbi that was there.
I propose, Chairperson.
You're going to propose and then I'll second. Thank you so much. The minutes are so adopted. Okay. Are there any other business that we need to deal with, Ms. Kamish Ahmad?
No, Chair, we all sorted. Thank you.
Okay, I don't remember there being any feedback from my side at the moment. Anything administrative-wise from your side, Ms. Kamish Ahmad?
Chairperson, I will be sending the revised or the amended time for the Monday's meeting as soon as I have confirmation from the Programming Authority. Apologies for that time, as it was a time that was, it's incorrect from my side. Thanks.
No problem. We will request revision given that the NCP will be sitting with negotiating mandate at 12:30. So members, please just do keep an eye on your inbox in this regard. I really appreciate it. Are there any other matters before I conclude the meeting? If none, then I thank the members. Thank you so much. Then I thank the members for your robust engagement. I think this has probably been the best year in terms of budget participation, robust discussion. And members, I think I'm a little sad actually, because this will be the last division of revenue amendment bill that we'll be dealing with in our term. So just thank you so much for this engagement. I really appreciate it. With that, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. Have a lovely day.